Let's factor some trinomials. So far we've factored a couple different ways, or we've used a couple different methods. The first way that I showed you guys how to factor was to factor out a GCF, a greatest common factor, and that's actually something that you do anytime you're going to factoring. You always look for a GCF first. So we're going to do that here. We're going to look for a GCF when we factor these trinomials. The second method is when you have four terms, you could use grouping. You could make two groups of two and use the grouping method to try to factor. The third way is this way we're going to factor right now, and that works when we have trinomials. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the first example, this letter A, and see how we can factor this. So there's my pen. My pen's working. Okay. Alright, so here's the deal. You're going to look, when you're factoring a trinomial, at that sign right there. Always look at that sign when you're going to factor. It's going to help you set up your parentheses. So after we look at that sign, what we do is we start two sets of parentheses, like so. If this sign is a plus, and it is a plus right here, we then look at this sign. Whatever that sign is, positive in this case, you put it in the parentheses twice. If it were a negative 6x, I'd put minus, minus. From there, I see that I have x squared, so that's going to be x in x. X times x is x squared. And the last thing I do is I look for two numbers that multiply to give me this 8, but add to give me 6. And if you guessed that it would be 4 and 2, you would be correct. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 plus 2 is 6. Alright, now let me show you how you would check this if you don't believe me. Some of you are probably scratching your heads right now. So over here we do the check. And when we check, we just go backwards. So let's take our answer, or what we think is the correct answer. And I would say this as I would say the quantity x plus 4 times the quantity x plus 2. Whenever I say quantity, that means it's in parentheses. Alright, so let's do this checking here. Since factoring is the opposite of multiplying, we're going to multiply to check. So we have x times x squared, or x times x, that's x squared. And we have x times 2, which is 2x. From there, we're going to take 4 times x. That's 4x. And 4 times 2, which is 8. And then from here, if we combine our like terms, you'll see that we have x squared plus 6x. 2x and 4x is 6x. See, 2 and 4 right there, right? And then we have plus 8. And if we compare that, draw a little arrow here, to our original problem, guess what? It matches up. So that tells us that over here, this is our answer. Let's do another problem. We'll clear that. Go to the next slide. Next slide, please, Bob. Bob's the guy that turns the pages on my slides. Alright, let's see. The next problem here, we're going to skip B. We're going to look at C. I always look right there first when I have a trinomial. It's a plus. If that's a plus, I look at this sign. It's a minus. I put it twice. If there's a plus and a minus, the minus goes twice. Remember last one, if there was a plus and a plus, we put two pluses. Alright, x squared, right here, this x squared, that becomes x times x, which is x squared. And now we need two numbers that multiply to give you 16, but add to give you negative 10. And if you guessed that those two numbers were 8 and 2, or you can think of it as negative 8 and negative 2, you would be correct. So the quantity x minus 8 times the quantity x minus 2 would be the answer. And again, you could multiply to check to see that you had the right thing there. Alright, let's go on here. So far we've only looked at problems where I'm going to get a little mathematical on you here. I'm going to say x squared plus bx, ax squared plus bx plus c. Oh, I'm getting fancy. A, b, and c, those are all numbers. You're saying no, they're letters. They're A, B, and C. Those are letters from the alphabet. No. This is kind of a standard way of writing a trinomial, and A, B, and C are numbers. So far, the A we've been dealing with is a 1. If you look up here and see, there's a 1 in front of that x squared. In B, we didn't do it, but there's a 1 in front of that x squared. The B, or the C right here so far, has been a positive amount. If you look right in front of this 16, it's positive. If you look in front of that 6, it's positive. Now we're going to look at problems where in front of this C, it's a negative. It's a negative C. So let's look at a few of those examples right here. Clear that. We'll skip this page because that's just practice. Alright, see right here it says when C is negative. Example 2. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at letter A. And this time I look right in front of the 18 and it's negative. So if it's negative, I automatically do this. I automatically put 1 plus and 1 minus. That's it. I don't care what this sign is right here, that it's a positive. If this is a negative, I put 1 plus and 1 minus. Some of you are asking, could I have put 1 minus and 1 plus? And my answer is yes, you could do that as well. But I like plus and then a minus, so that's how I'm going to do it. Alright, let's get rid of all that stuff. Okay, x squared still. We're going to make that x and x. And now let's look, and we have to find two numbers that multiply to give you negative 18, but add to give you positive 7. Now, since these numbers have different signs, one positive and one negative, and when I add them, I want a positive 7, that tells me, because I'm using my brain, that the bigger number has to go behind this plus sign, and the smaller number has to go behind this minus sign. So let's get two numbers here. Let's try 6 and 3, because 6 and 3 give us negative 18 when we multiply them. If I were to add them together, positive 6 and negative 3, that would give me negative 3, which is no good. So I'm going to get rid of them. What else could we use? We could try 9 and 2. Let's try 2. Put the 2 in front of or behind the positive and the 9 behind the negative. Well, if we multiply, we get negative 18. If we add, though, we get negative 7. That's no good. I don't want negative 7. I want positive 7. So how are we going to fix that? Well, it's a pretty easy fix, actually, because we have the correct two numbers. Let's put the 9 behind the positive and the 2 behind the negative, and that will fix our problem up for us. So the answer is the quantity x plus 9 times the quantity x minus 2. Cross C out. We're not going to do that. Alright, let's use a different color. I'm getting bored with black. Okay. Look in front of the 24. It's negative. Alright, that tells me that I have one of each sign, plus and minus. And x squared tells me that it's x and x. Okay, so let's get these two numbers here. Two numbers that multiply to give me 24, but add to give me negative 5. Since the middle term, this term right here, since that's negative, the bigger number is going right there. Let's see, 6 and 4 would multiply to give me negative 24, but I don't want that. 8 and 3, I think that'll work. Let's make the 8, since 8's bigger than 3, let's make that negative, and let's make the 3 positive since it's smaller than 8. When we multiply, we get negative 24, and when we add, we get negative 5. So those two quantities multiplied together, that would be our answer. We can circle it. We're good with that. Let's check this one, though. Just one last reminder on checking, because it's always a good idea to check your work. I know everybody checks their work after every single problem, because the most important thing is to make sure you have the problem right and not just to get the problem done. No sarcasm there. Alright, so let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and take the x times the x. I have x squared. I'm going to take the x times the negative 8. Get negative 8x. I'm going to take 3 times x. That's 3x. And then 3 times negative 8. and I have negative 24. My dog's clapping because we got the right answer right there. We have x squared minus 5x when we combine those two middle terms, minus 24. And if we draw an arrow, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways because I like to draw arrows. That matches the original problem, which means we did something correct. Okay, so when we're factoring trinomials, the key thing here when we're factoring the trinomials, I'm going to erase all this stuff so we can make my key points. The key thing is you look right there. If that's a minus, you do two sets of parentheses with one of each sign. If this were a plus, let's change this to make that a plus just for our purposes. If this were a plus, then I would look right here, and that tells me to put two negatives. If this were a positive, then I'd put two positives. And from there you do a little bit of factoring, and voila, you are finished.